In this episode, we're talking with author, YouTuber, and gel printer Robyn McClendon. Robyn is deeply invested in community and helping other people tell their stories through art. Hi, my name is Cindy Jones-Lantier, and I'm the host of Beyond the Brayer. I'm a longtime gel printer and the owner and admin of the popular gel print enthusiast group on Facebook. Before we get into this episode, I'd like to invite you. If you are into gel printing, I'd love it if you join us in the gel print enthusiast group. Just look for us on Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, please follow Beyond the Brayer on Instagram to keep up with the podcast. Now, let's meet Robyn. As an artist, healer, and art-mythologist, telling stories and helping others to heal is at the core of who Robyn McClendon is and what she feels called to do, and embraces all that she is inspired to share with the world. Art Mythos is a part of several projects and narratives. As a mixed media artist, Robyn tells stories and encourages others to do the same through the visual context. As a healer and Reiki master, Robyn helps others shed old stories and helps encourage them to be replaced by stories that are empowering and or self-directed and not be burdened by cultural mores and family histories. As an art-mythologist, Robyn leads retreats and workshops that combine visual arts, idea generation, and book arts to help participants find their voice, their own stories, to be able to move forward and recognize a more authentic artistic experience. Robyn has dedicated most of her life to seeking and sharing the answers to life's most mystical questions. Who are we? Where are we? And why are we here? In her quest to find answers, she studied and worked as an archaeomythologist for the past 30 years, teaching at the Smithsonian institutions and Corcoran galleries. She has combined her archaeological adventures and knowledge of historical symbols and icons, formulating theoretical research in the areas of human consciousness. All her field research and museum experience amplified her spiritual understandings with great depth of perception and understanding. Her latest line of research combines her three passions: field research, art and spirituality, with a particular focus on shapes, sounds, and symbols, and their effect on human consciousness. Today we're here to talk with Robyn about her gel printing, but I'm sure we'll cover so much more. What is an archaeomythologist? And tell me where that word came from.
Absolutely. So my background is in cultural anthropology. That's what I graduated from the University of Maryland, the Department of Behavioral Studies. And as a result of that, I also minored in archaeology. So as a result of that, I come across this amazing Lithuanian archaeologist by the name of Marjorie or Miriam Gimbutas. It's Gimbutus. Anybody wants to look her up. She came from Lithuania to Harvard. In the early days in the 50s, there weren't really any female archaeologists. So she was in a sea of men who didn't always agree with the way she was seeing things. But she did a lot of archaeological digs in old Europe, Lithuania, Bulgaria, places like this, where it was the seat of a lot of the old world matristic cultures. And she did a lot of stuff with the hearth, and the hearth being a part of the home. And we know that's a lot in folklore. So she's a big believer that those true indigenous stories are in folklore stories. Anyway, she discovered that upon finding things, the various digs, that she was sort of piecing the stories together. She was sort of looking at them. She was finding material, but she was putting folklore together, and she was trying to piece together a past, an ancient past. And so she realized, not only am I an archaeologist, I'm a mythologist too. I'm sort of like this storyteller. I'm trying to figure out what these stories are that go along with this found textual material. And so she called herself an archaeomythologist for archaeology and mythology, storytelling. Well, that really resonated with me as an artist myself, and cultural anthropologist. And in anthropology, we do a lot of the same thing. We're telling a lot of stories. We're looking at the cultural stories that are a part of the narratives, right? And so I thought, okay, here, I'm an archaeomythologist because I'm very much into how we tell stories with is a part of our visual dialogue. And my brand Art Mythos is all about telling visual stories. And I really like to share with my community this idea that we have visual dialogues and we have visual vocabularies. And what is your visual vocabulary? Really learning what that is, because it makes you a more effective storyteller. So that's how I've become an archaeomythologist.
That is so cool. And I love that you took a word, well, that she just made up a word, and then that you took it and adapted it for you so that it really expressed what you do and who you are in that space.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And anyone who follows me gets to be an archaeomythologist too, if it resonates with them, because, it just feels good, to know that we can tell stories and we're empowered to tell stories with our art.
Well, I studied history for a little while in college, but beyond the required.
Mm-hmm.
The dates and all of that were just a drudgery.
Mm-hmm.
Stories, I love reading like people's diaries from the Civil War more than I like studying the campaigns.
Exactly.
Stories that bring things to life.
And that was why I went into anthropology, because anthropology is the stories.
Right.
It really gets to the seat and the core of who people are, why they are, and how they get to try to transform whatever their stories are. That's what cultural anthropology actually is. And what a lot of people don't know, but anthropology is one of the legs of a three-leg stool. So in the Department of Behavioral Studies, you have anthropology, psychology, and psychiatry. Well, psychiatry, we know, is the medicinal application that goes with psychology. And these are all three a part of the same stool. So it makes sense when you think about the idea of how people tell their stories. What are your stories? Getting to the core of what your stories are, right? And then bringing them up. And so anthropology is a part of that on that same stool.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So let's get into the gritty. How did you first get into gel printing?
Okay. Well, I studied, as you said earlier in the bio, that I was adjunct professor at the Corcoran School of Art, and I was working with BFA students, fourth year students, in their thesis projects. And those projects were books. They needed to make books, but they could have been anywhere from graphic design, printmakers, working in back then Photoshop was new, so you could be in Photoshop, Adobe CAD, any of that, and you could bring any of that into your thesis, your senior project, as well as traditional printmaking. I came out of the tradition. I learned book arts and paper making in a time when those arts were being lost, because what was the invention that came along? It was the Mac desktop,
right?
Little box, and that box changed everything. It changed the print houses, the way books were being created, magazines, etc. So a lot of these small print shops that were all over the city, in every city in America and in the world really, were starting to die off because nobody really needed to do typesetting. So they were starting to die off. People were giving this stuff away, and print shops were starting to die off. And we all were like, and we were artists, people wanted, these print shops wanted to give us all this stuff, and we would take it and all that. And then we started assembling in these warehouse places where we had collectives, and we really started teaching ourselves book arts. There were some folks that had been doing it for a while in New York and London, Ken Campbell, people like that, Tim Ely. And so they would come around the country and do these workshops. And so we kind of learned the apprentice fashion of book arts. Well, as it really caught on, the universities wanted to bring it in. So there were a number of us that were called to come out to universities and set up their book arts department. I went to a few different universities, University of Tennessee, Birmingham. I went to a number of schools and set up the book arts department. I landed at the Corcoran as an adjunct professor. That's what I also did at the Smithsonian. I set up the book arts department in the Smithsonian Resident Associates program. And so what that program was about people from all genres that were coming in and doing research studies in all different parts of the institutions, but they might want to do a limited edition book, project, that kind of thing. And so I set that up and did them for them. So at the Corcoran, book arts and most of the departments, book binding and book arts, went into the printmaking departments. So the printmaking department, you generally had printing, paper making came into those departments too, and then books came in. So I knew a lot about paper making and book arts. At that time, I'd become a master book artist and paper maker. Didn't know much about printmaking. I learned a lot from a number of my colleagues there that were like top professionals in printmaking, because I needed to understand it enough to work with my students, right? So I learned a lot. So fast forward to the, gosh, when was this? About 13 years ago, 14 years ago now. That would have been like the late 2000s, I mean, 2000, like 11, what would that be? Like 11 or 12, right? I was living in Chicago, and I was living in one of the 6 flats, and it was a nice condo, but it had one of those really long hallways. And so I didn't really have a place for my art studio at that point. So I thought I can turn this hallway into it, but I couldn't set up big painting projects and all that kind of stuff. It just wasn't the space. So I was looking around and being inspired on YouTube in the early days, like we all have been. And I came across this gel plate thing, and it was Robyn Marie Smith, and I've told her this story. I saw her doing it. A couple of the ladies were doing it, but there was like a little collective of them, her and a few others that were printing. And I thought, let me get one of those. So I went out, I guess, to Blick or someplace like that, and got, might have been Michael's at the time, and got the plate and started working on it. Well, immediately when I put paint and brayer to it, it took me back to inking up acrylic plates or wood plates or intaglio plates and putting them through the big platen presses. But those things are not only amazingly heavy, but they're like tens of thousands of dollars. So you're just not going to have that in your studio. So that's when I started applying these techniques that I had discovered, and found that the gel plate was hugely receptive to that. So that's kind of how I got to the gel plate.
Robyn Marie Smith was actually, I think, the one who introduced me to the plate. And when I got my first plate, I actually couldn't find one locally and made one.
Good for you. I know a number of people were making them. Yeah.
Yeah, because I couldn't find one locally. And I don't know why. That was before you Amazoned everything. And
yeah,
it didn't occur to me to order one and have it shipped to me.
Yeah, it was way before any of that. You know, I just lucked out because I was in Chicago at the time, and Blake's and Michael, of course, a city like that, they had them. So I was able to just go and get it. But yeah, I know what you mean.
So do you typically plan your prints, or do you work intuitively, or do you do a combination of that?
Now it's a combination. When I first did it, it wasn't, because I was learning a lot of techniques, and I was kind of discovering what I wanted to do on the gel plate, what was most inspirational for me for the style, the way that I work. And as you know, I do a lot of intuitive scripting. I do a lot with Sumi brush painting. That's the core of my work, that, and also encaustic. I'm an encaustic painter. And so for me, the gel plate was a tool to create papers and images and imagery that would reflect my voice and would become a part of other projects. So what I was discovering is that I wanted, like the best paints to create the illusion of not only old walls, but old documents, things that look like old paintings, maybe old Asian stuff. And so for me, it was about figuring out how I wanted to create these illusions through the gel plate. And I discovered what I didn't like and what I wasn't so crazy about doing. So yeah, it was a process of discovery. Also for me, it was learning what type of paints I like using on the plate. And probably my most favorite paints are not the typical ones that people are using all the time to get the kind of layers and techniques I'm looking for. But yeah, so it was that kind of process of discovery.
What are your favorite paints?
Well, my favorite type of paints are thin things with good binders, but very thin color. So not a lot of color, the illusion of it. So I can work with my inks on the plate to pull prints that have that kind of feel to them. I also love working with block printing inks. They're the best, especially for layering. You get some of the best stuff with the block printing inks. Because I work very thin on the plate, prints will have probably, and that's how I worked in the very early days, very thin layers. So by the time I would finish working on a piece of onion skin, which is already thin itself, I probably had 20 or more layers on that paper. Now, it wouldn't be full plates. I'm using sections of it. I'm pulling stuff up. I'm creating these layers. But what I found is if I did a push and pull between a thinner weight paint, not so much fluid. I find the fluids are sometimes a little bit too watery for the plate. You can work with them, but you can't have a full range of fluids because you're just not going to ever give you everything you need. I have found that if you can work with some of your favorite different brands and different formulations, so you may have a little bit of fluid, but you may have as your standard grade acrylic. I think working with matte finishes or fresco finishes are really, really good. Chalk paints, and then working with some transparent paints, having a full spectrum of palette with all these different paints perform best on the gel plate. The gel plate likes a lot of tension to create texture and to create full-bodied looks. So that's the first thing I always say. Don't just go with one paint company because you're not going to get the best out of it. Then when you do that, you start learning which formulation work best. So you might like a turquoise, right? But the turquoise, let's say in a golden, which is one of my favorite turquoises, works better than, let's say, a turquoise over in, let's just say, maybe a Liquitex. But a Liquitex brown sienna works better than the same color in goldens. So I say experiment with a lot of colors, a lot of paint lines, and then you can begin to see which ones really are working best for the way you want to use your techniques. So that's kind of like the first tip. And that's what I do a lot of. When you work with block printing inks, because they're water soluble, you don't want to mix them back and forth with acrylics because you can get, if they're trapped underneath an acrylic, they really don't dry. But I have discovered you can work them on top of some acrylic bases to do a finishing look. Yeah, but I'll show you in the book the difference between like this is images that are 100%. Can you see those?
Yes.
100% block printing inks. And you see the very etheric kind of quality of them. And you can see there's a lot of layers on there, a ton of layers. But they build up and they give you a completely different print quality from where, now this is one where there's the old wall of and block printing on top of acrylic. So that's quinacridone in the back there. And then I was able to do the block printing on top. And you get this very rich texture. So you can put it on top of stuff as well. But yeah, those are some of my favorite. I use straight acrylic in my prints sparingly. I use acrylic, but I really mix it in with a lot of stuff. My favorite acrylics right now, interesting enough, are the Aura paints, which we're going to start getting them here in America because Blick is supposed to be picking them up. But I represent Aura in as a gel printer, and some kind of way they're out of the Netherlands, but that formula is absolutely superior. I've never actually been able to use a paint line that you can use most of those colors. I still mix in my chalks and all that, but just as straight acrylics, they're really superior. So you get your hands on some, definitely try them. They're a lot of fun.
I'll keep my eyes on Blick then, because I noticed you use them and some other artists are starting to use them.
Yeah.
They are hard to get.
They're really hard to get. Yeah. Maybe I can get some sent to you from Art so you can try them out. You know, yeah, I'll work on that.
Okay. Thank you. Where do you find inspiration for not just for your prints, but for your art in general?
Well, that's a good question. My inspiration really comes from the study of cultures, 100%. I'm always thinking about, even like right now with everything that's going on in the world and as chaotic as it is, for me, as a cultural anthropologist, I'm thinking, okay, when has this happened again? Because it's happened every 20 or 30 years, we get something, you know, that's amazing in our culture that happens. And so what I like to do is think of like, how something like this happened before? And I'll normally go back in and study artist movements. And when you go into those movements, it's amazing how you see these similar responses. So right now I've been spending a lot of time on art on Povera, which was an Italian movement in the 60s and 70s. It was around, it was called poor art, but it really wasn't art like because it was poor, artists were poor. And of course, some of that was it, but it was really a response to globalism, to everything being shining and new and the fast paced culture of things. And it had, of course, a lot to do with Vietnam War. So it was war times. And these artists were taking rags and stuff that was found and all that kind of stuff and humble materials and using it in their art. And their point was to shun away from things that were shiny and glossy and quick and fast. And, and so I go back and a number of them are among my favorite artists anyway, like or Fontana or whatever. But I like to go back and read their stories. I like to read what they were thinking. And I use it as food for my own soul to think about my own current dialogues and what I want to say. And one of the biggest things that I'm saying to my community right now is that as artists, we are in a unique position to use our visual storytelling to have a very powerful voice, but in a way that's quiet resistance, right? So you have this beautiful, quiet resistance, but you can do it in this powerful way where, on a quantum level, when we think about quantum physics and stuff, when you think about quantum, it's a field that matriculates out of us, like sound comes out of us, vibrations come right, well, we don't think about it, but we resonate a field that comes out in our art. And if we really have a heart for people wanting to just be happy and joyful and like, let's just all get along kind of thing, right? We can put that in our work. And amazingly, when people come across that work, they might not know that they're picking it up, but they will pick up those vibrations. And I think we're at a point, as many artists have been for over the centuries, when we're at these sort of turning points, we can put out these messages through our own stories or just through our own desires. Because even though we all may go along about it differently, probably most people can agree that we just want to be happy. We just want to be peaceful. We just want love. We just want joy. And we may not agree on it if we start talking out our mouths. But at a base level, that's what most people want. And I think as artists, because we have these visual dialogues, what's interesting about the visual is that when we have a feeling, it's in the heart. But you can't ever express with words what's in your heart, right? When you tell your kids or, a spouse, I love you, I mean, it's just so pale. It really doesn't get at how you really feeling in your heart, right? The closest thing to heart expression is a symbol. And then from a symbol, you go to the written, and then from the written to the spoken. And each degree of that, it lessens the impact of it. So as artists, we get to sit in symbols, man, and we get to put that there. And that's the purest, closest expression to our heart. So that's where I get my inspiration.
That's interesting that you would say that. I talked to Patricia and Mariah of PM Artist Studios. And one of the things they're really focusing on right now is the art of resistance. Not the art of resistance as in being resistant, but making art that demonstrates resistance.
Yeah, it's this quiet, it's just sort of this quiet, it's a quiet resistance. It's not about, it's like, when we think about back in the 60s, when you had the civil rights movement, it's like the doctrine of King, or Gandhi, it was peaceful protest, right? It was this idea of peaceful resistance. And I think that these are the kind of stories we can go back and learn from and not allow ourselves to be totally, our parasympathetic system is just out of whack because everything is coming out. We don't know how to rest and digest any longer. So yeah, but to me, stories come out of that. And I also encourage, and for me, stories come out of my personal family line, my ancestors. I go back and look. Both of my grandmothers on my maternal and paternal side were German, and they came here from Germany. One came at the turn of the end of the 1800s when they were dealing with that war, and then one came in the 50s. And so both were coming from wartime type of things, right, into this country. And so I go back and look at that, and that resistance and that resilience, and then that becomes a part of my storyline. So I always say, let's go back and look at what our ancestors did, and let's bring that into our storyline, because we're here as a result of them being able to manage crazy times. Put it like that.
Yes. I love that, because as we've already talked about, stories are so important, and they impact the way our own personal stories impact the way we see the world, the way we interact with the world, the way we interact with other people. Yep. And so I think becoming more conscious of those stories, more consciously trying to express them through your art is a great idea. Thank you.
Right. And it's funny because I find when I was in my community and when I also go and do workshops, I just came back from an amazing workshop in Portugal with a great group of women. We had the best time. But what I've discovered is two things, is that Right now, I think we've been jelly printing long enough that it's okay to be technique based because we know new people are always coming in. But now, what do we do with the techniques? What do we do with these prints? And it's kind of time to kind of continue to evolve into doing more with the prints and less just pulling a print, right? And I think that where I'm finding the resistance is that people don't really know what their stories are. They don't really know, well, okay, I can pull this, but now what do I do with it? Or what am I saying with it? And that's where I'm coming in at this next juncture, going into the next decade of me dealing with jelly printing is, okay, let me help you with this part of it now, because it's time to help develop the stories. And I think in that way, our community will become broader, more robust, more stuff, more important and powerful stuff will come out, because now we're taking all of this skill, all this time, all this love and joy and passion that we have and putting it in things that can resonate a message. And I think that I'm learning more and more that that's what people are seeking from me when they come to workshops, is to learn more of that kind of stuff. So yeah.
It's interesting you would say that, because I watch several YouTubers, because I just love jelly printing. I play in the background while I'm doing dishes and things.
Yeah.
But I go to each one for specific things.
Yes.
I don't expect, I have gel printers that I watch that meticulously clean their plate after every pull.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't expect an old wall look from them.
Right.
But I appreciate what I get from them.
Exactly.
But from you, I expect something different. I expect a little deeper conversation.
Yeah, and I think we all are in the fields doing exactly what we need to do, right? Because people, like you said, we meet folks at all different places in this journey. And so I totally agree with you. And see, the thing too is that being a teacher, I understand the various pedagogies, and some people just can't stand a mess. They just can't. No, I got to clean this. It's just how they're wired. They have to do that. But that's okay, because it speaks to the kind of art they're going to create and the kind of art they are creating, right? And so that's why one of my biggest slogans across all of what I do is, I truly believe this: there are no rights or no wrongs. It's just what you want to do. And if you keep yourself in free expression, there are times I clean my plate, because there's certain techniques I do. I got to have a clean plate. In fact, what I do is I keep the flip side of my plate reserved for only certain techniques. So I know my plate is always clean. I don't have no dings in it. I don't have extra stuff on it. Because remember, there's two sides to a plate. You get to use both sides. So depending on the technique, I'll use a side that I need to be pristine, because that technique calls for it. So yeah, no, there are no rights or wrongs. And I think that the more broad and rich this community is, the better we all are for it. Yeah, definitely. I agree with you.
One of the things I love about gel printing is that it allows creativity for people who don't traditionally think of themselves as artistic.
Exactly.
I cannot draw an engaging stick figure. I can barely draw a straight line with a ruler, but I can gel print.
Yes. Yeah.
And I can explore my creativity and what I like and what speaks to me. And it's made me appreciate other people's art more. What I like.
Yeah. I agree with you there. And the thing about gel printing, it's almost like collage, or it's like junk journals. It just has a beautiful entry point where you don't feel like, oh my God, I got to know this, I got to know that. You can just get in there and have a good time. And honestly, that's what art really means. Art really is talking about us taking, what's inside of us and what's in our heart, right? And putting it down in some physical display. Most people, when you say they're artists, or people say, no, I'm not really an artist because I can't draw. Drawing is a technique. That's not the definition of art. And you can be the most amazing artist and can't even draw a stick figure. That's not what art is. And it's really a common misconception. As much as if I could just bust that one up alone, that would be amazing, because I think it would free more people up to not only see themselves as an artist. That's like saying that, you can cook really good in your home kitchen, but because you didn't go to Cordon Bleu, you're not a cook.
Right.
I mean, what? I mean, you can be a chef in your own little, like, who does that? So no, I think that the more we can lift these restraints around what actually art is, and art should come from our soul and create joy and be a part of our passion. And everybody's not trying to sell their art. Everybody's not trying to display their art. We just want to have fun. Can we just have fun? You know what I mean? And
Yes.
so, yes, exactly what you're talking about.
One of my most common responses to people who are complaining about their first prints, their first pulls, is, but did you have fun?
Yes. It's about having fun.
I pull a print and I stack it up. It's the act of doing it, the
Mhm.
act of learning new techniques. Some techniques I never come back to after I try them.
Right. Exactly. Some things just don't speak to me. Some things do. You know, I agree with you. It's like you settle in to your little nest where, you know, you can get it all feathered and downed right and everything. And this is my sweet spot. This is my happy spot. And
Mhm.
just that's where you go from there. So now I'm a big believer in we shouldn't do art if we're not happy doing it. We shouldn't, like don't do anything that's not bringing you joy. And if it's stressing you out, then change the way you're doing it because, and it's funny because when I first came into this conversation 12 years ago and I started my YouTube channel, I really hesitated coming in because I thought, wow, I'm not really doing this gel plate like everybody else is. And I might be laughed off the stage. And oh my goodness, honestly, because I knew I was just coming to it differently. And I just thought, well, people might not like it, but I thought, well, heck, I like it if I don't do it, but anything for myself. And of course, I have a different style that people resonate with. And it gives them permission to do it a little differently. And then there's all crossovers. Like you say, you're an example of crossover. I like Robyn. I like this. I like Crazy Patty. I like, everybody, actually, I'm going to be seeing Patty in a couple of weeks in Maryland. She does a fun little just kind of artist retreat thing. And I love hanging out with her. She's just such a sweet person. But yeah, I mean, we just have all these different ways of approaching it, right? And it's okay, for sure.
I run the gel print enthusiast Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody is so hung up on image transfers.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful technique. I mean,
Yeah.
it expresses something people like Jessica Russo, who does the reverse painting.
Yes. Yeah. It's nice. It's wonderful.
It's wonderful. It's beautiful to look at. It does nothing for me to do.
Yeah. And the funny thing about photo transfer, which is it's a very interesting conundrum. And I think about it a lot because a lot of people ask me about it. I think the first rewarding thing about it that is what attracts everybody is literally you can pull something, say you did it, and it looks like something. Everybody who can't do stick figures and can't draw a flower, you know what I mean? It's like, wow, I can do something. And when I'm done, it really looks good. So I think that's the first thing that really attracts people, right? The output feels accomplished. Challenge was so that in itself is fabulous. Me as a mixed media and working artist, the challenge I have with image transfer is that I have to be able to use my images or sufficiently alter another image to the point that I can use it in my work. Because I'm very careful not to do any plagiarism or use anybody else's work and then put it up and say it's mine. So I'm very conscious of that kind of stuff. And so with photography, it is somebody else's photos, right? And so you have to alter it enough if you're just going to do it for your fun, it doesn't matter. But if you're going to put it in a gallery, or even if you put it on Instagram showing, I just made this print, technically you should kind of say, I got it out of this book or whatever. You should give photo credit as much as you can. That's just, like they say, that's just the law. Now, so for me, I have to do my own photography and then do it. Well, then you have to do it on laser prints, and laser print is even a little more challenging than just getting the photo out. So it's a process. It's great. And some people are really able to carry that forward and no problem. The other side of it, which is why people, when they first start doing it, are not successful with it, is because they don't really know how to gel print properly first. And I can't tell you how many people who come to my workshops who have been gel printing for a long time and do good. Within the first half an hour of the workshop, I go back over the beginning and I show them the technique, the correct technique. And it's almost something you have to see and hear. You have to be able to see it and hear it. And then when people get it, within 10 minutes of going back to their desk and work, and their whole prints change. They completely transform. Because you can say, don't use a lot of paint. The brayer is designed to distribute paint, wax on, wax off. You can say that over and over again, but until it becomes experiential, people don't understand. Well, there's no way in the world you're going to pull a successful photo transfer, if you really don't understand how to do basic gel printing and you don't know your paints, because every paint doesn't transfer either. just like every image doesn't. Finding the image is a lot easier, but that technique, so it's not a technique that, you know, if you work at it and work at it and work at it, like some of the folks out there that just do amazing photo transfers, that's all they do is photo transfer. So they can make it look easy. So it's just one of those things that I say, intermediate to advanced, it ain't beginner.
Yes, yes. And you sparked an idea in me when you said they make it look easy. So much of what we know about gel printing is social media.
Yeah, that's it.
See all the pulls that didn't work. Don't see how long the paint sat there, how long the paper sat. Everything looks very slap it on, pull it off.
Yeah. And many of us don't get to go to in-person workshops to see it. Compared to the amount of gel printers out there and the amount of people that actually go to workshops is a small quantity. You know, you could actually do, for a while I was doing what I called Geli printing labs, where I'd go to a city and just a one day, you know, kind of workshop. And because I found that if I could just get in front of people hands-on together just for a few minutes, we can solve the problems, many problems that people really are having right now. And it's interesting because in my workshop in Portugal, there was a woman there that had never done gel printing. She wanted to learn, she'd done books and stuff, but she wanted to come to Portugal. She wanted to meet, she was in my community and just wanted to have fun. She's, I've never gel printed. But in college, she studied art and she knew printmaking. So she knew how to monoprint. So I said, Crystal, you got this. You're just going to ink this gel plate up the same way you would ink up your acrylic plate going through the platen press. You're just going to use acrylic. You're not going to be using intaglio ink. And she said, really? And I'm like, yeah. And I just watched her. I said, just go ahead and do. I just watched her. And her first two prints were just like that, because she understood the technique. It's experiential. Once you get it, you got it. And I said, see, I told you. She's, oh my God, I can't believe it. I'm like, yeah, because you already had the technique. So anybody who's a printmaker, they get it right off. And a lot of people who are showing techniques on Instagram that really do amazing stuff have been former printmakers, and they really understand that medium. So they can do like just crazy stuff with that plate. Yeah. In fact, when I was working with Geli Arts, because you know I'm an ambassador for them, and Luann reached out to me a number of years back, maybe 8 years ago now, to maybe 9 now, to be an ambassador or whatever. And after a couple of years of working, I said, Luann, you got to get a bigger plate, because at that point she just had the 9x12. She said, a bigger plate. I said, you got to go bigger, because the people who are coming into this industry and understand this need to work big. And then everybody else, as they're coming along, or want to go bigger. So that's when she came out with that first, I think it was the 12x14. And she sent me the first prototype before she released it. And I played around. Okay, this is good. So after about a year, I said, you got to go bigger. She said, bigger. So now that she's on that big one, which is, I think is a 24 by 26, 20 by 24 or something like that. She says, is it big enough? I said, well, I don't know how you're going to sell anything any bigger, because I'm in my studio putting 4 of those together. She said, 4 of those together. I'm like, yeah, I print 4 of those big ones at a time, because now I'm getting a big platen press type of thing. So it's just funny, the evolution of big on the plate. But you can actually have a big plate and still work really small by still putting 8.5 by 11s on there. And you get some interesting prints if you do the whole thing and put smaller pieces all down around it and pull those. Really great studies. So yeah.
You mentioned somebody in your community. So what is the role of community in your creative life, especially your gel print life?
Well, you know what? I love community, and that's what attracted me to, saying yes to come and doing this podcast with you, because I think it's brilliant that that through this podcast, you're just creating a much larger community around something that I absolutely adore. So I just think it's brilliant, and my hat's off to you, or my heart goes out to this project with you, because community is such that, in the last 15 years, everything has been internet based, right? For most part, artists have learned a lot online, techniques online. As the internet and technology has gotten broader, we can just do more stuff like this. Well, what's happened is that we're all kind of in our own little spaces, thinking that we're a part of something because we're on Instagram, or we're on Facebook, or we watch people on YouTube. But it's so far removed from how art was even prior technology. We got together at cultural centers and at art collectives, right? And we came together and did little painting things, and like quilting bees, painting bees and all that stuff. And during that time, we weren't just creating the art, we weren't just doing the technique. We're talking about what happened to us yesterday, what's getting ready to happen to us, a loved one lost, or a child just had a baby, or was married, or I have this problem. I'm trying to figure out how to deal with this situation with my kid. We were talking and doing everything and doing our art. And that's what community is, right? Because that's who we are as a greater part of ourselves. Like this gel printing, as amazing as it is, the more we integrate it into lifestyle, the more it becomes a part of something that we do and that we share out among ourselves and talk about all these other kind of things. That's what creates community. And so as we were able to create more online groups and then even begin to meet more in person, but then that sort of got interrupted with the pandemic, and so we were all shut back down. And so though we were really reaching out more to connect with people, it was there, but it wasn't reciprocity. It wasn't this back and forth exchange. And I think the more even online we can create, reciprocal kind of relationships in community, more so. So, I have my Facebook group, which it's always been private because I've wanted to have a safe place for people to come, show their art. I'm a real lieutenant over there. Like, you get in there, say anything nasty about somebody's work, you're gone. I mean, I just don't tolerate that. Like, don't say anything if you can't say something nice. And then my Patreon community, we have over 1,000 people there, and I show up all the time for that because it's a real community. Like, we're really talking and giving. I do a weekly Zoom session where we just get to show up and talk. Show me your work. Let's talk about what's going on. And we talk about everything. We show our art, and this is what we just did. But then we talk about a loved one or something, and it's so good. And we leave those sessions, we just feel enriched, And so community it's like everything. Art is not about another technique. Art is about being able to express something in a way that hopefully somebody else gets it, or it just makes somebody else smile. That's really what it is. And I think that happens as a result of community, Cindy,
Oh, I agree totally. I used to be a professional soap maker.
Okay.
Pandemic.
Right.
I absolutely loved craft fairs, even though
me too.
Work. They are a lot of work, don't
they? They are a lot of work.
But I love craft fairs because I got to interact with my community, people who bought my soap. I got to find out, what have you been doing? Where'd you go on vacation? But I also got to find out what they wanted and needed. And I got to build relationships with some of them. And some of them I'm still friendly with.
Right. I agree with you there. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. When the pandemic came and that put a kibosh on craft fairs for a while.
It really has. They've recovered.
No, they haven't.
Right.
And people were telling me, put it online. You can sell soap online. Everybody needs soap during the pandemic.
Yeah.
It was so empty. Packaging up soap and taking it to the post office.
Yeah. Not to mention, then the post office started to fail. So then trying to mail anything out these days is absolutely horrid. I've closed my online shop because I can't. It's just more work than honestly what it's worth, losing things, and the cost is more than the product you're selling to people. And it's just insane. So I do know what you mean. But yeah, it did kind of go, as much as we found each other more during the pandemic, it really went empty in terms of human interaction. And I agree with you. I used to do a lot of shows myself prior to, 2020, but it's just a lot of that changed. But I'm really making an effort now to do more, online, destination workshops. Like I said, I just came back from Portugal. I'll be going to Maryland in a couple of weeks. I'm going to Ireland and Scotland in September. I'm looking at doing Morocco with Michelle Fletcher Atelier, and then Lithuania. So I'm just getting out there. I want to be out there meeting people and being a part of the world and talking and laughing and, sharing stories. And, it's just what it's all about for me, and really helping people get to their storylines. It's just something I'm good at, and I enjoy doing it. And so why not?
Exactly. If you're good at it and you enjoy it.
Oh yeah. No, it's just,
I don't enjoy it.
Yeah, no, when people ask me, what's your mission? I say, I like to help people get their greatest work out into the world. That's what I really enjoy doing. And whatever that is for you, and whatever the world is for you, You know, it could be around the corner. It could be your church bazaar. It could be whatever. That's not the point. The point is the inhibition to move forward into something that's important to you. I thrive on helping people with that.
That's a wonderful trait, Robyn.
Yeah.
I have just a couple more questions. Tell me the social media handle Rare Birds. Where does that come from?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, so, you know, growing up, I was always the odd kid. I was always the one that thought you should be able to do this. Why can't you do that? What's this about? That doesn't make sense. My parents really had to deal with something. So, you know, it was always like, oh, you're the black sheep of the family, or you're the oddball out, or, you know, whatever. Or, well, who thinks like you? You know, you hear that all the time.
Yes.
And so as I continued to, you know, my early 20s, and I started, you know, I kept on still seeing that people thought, oh, really, Robyn? Oh, that's different, you know, whatever, you know. And I thought, you know, I'm a rare bird. I mean, Robyn, you know, so that wasn't hard. And I thought, no, I'm a rare bird. You know, I'm okay. I'm good with my differences. I'm happy with who I am. I'm happy with my thinking. And I don't want to be deterred from it. And one of my big thinking was that I wanted to be a working artist, and I wanted to do everything we've talked about, work with people, share things out, and what have you. And I felt that I could be able to do it. And I didn't believe in the stories of a starving artist and all this kind of stuff. And so I went about life to prove that, yeah, we can do this. And I've always done it. You know, when I worked, you know, you're working a couple of days a week in the university, and that's a part of community. And I enjoyed that immensely. The Smithsonian, the same thing. But, you know, it was this idea I had in my head that, yes, I can do this. So that's where Rare Bird comes from.
I love it. I love it. So you've got a couple of exciting projects coming up. You mentioned all your destination teaching, and that is very exciting.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
You have a new release coming out through Schiffer Publishing.
Yes, I do. And I wanted to say, most folks are familiar with my gel printing book, but it was also released in French.
How exciting!
Yeah, last year this time it came out as a French volume. So I know you have a large community and a lot of, you know, Francophiles. So just know that they can get the book on Amazon, and it's totally the project was purchased by a French publisher, and it's totally in French. So yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah, you can also get it in French. So yeah, I had this idea, and I went back and proposed it to my publisher and said, look, I want to create a story, a travel series, and a storyline, because once again, what do I want? Art mythos. I like people to help people tell their stories. And so I picked the Silk Road as the route in which the story was going to be told along. And what I wanted to do was create these kits that would have stamps and stencils in them, and would hit all these different amazing spots across the Silk Road. And there's a protagonist, and, you know, she is telling the story in retrospect through her journal. So there's a booklet in each of the kits that tells the storyline. It also tells you how to use the stencils and all that kind of good stuff. But there's a storyline in there with a lot of my art, my pictures. It's very, very much like the book. It's rich in images. And the point of this project is there's 8 kits. 2 of them will come out in the fall. They're going to be released. They're up for pre-sale right now on Schiffer's site. They'll be released the beginning of October. And everybody who does purchase, go to Schiffer and does purchase a pre-sale on them and sends a copy of that, because you get a confirmation to my website, my email, info@RobynMcClendon, will be entered into a workshop for free that I'm going to hold around the kits and how I'm working with them, and the collage techniques that I'm doing, and all that kind of stuff, and just sort of be a part of the storyline. So the images are based on, I've done a lot of historical research. So they're based on either actual documents, or they're redrawn interpretations of actual symbols and what have you. What's important to me as a creator of these kind of kits is that I want people to be embracing it in their art, and it's all angel. So it's not like it's Robyn's art. It's my stamps. It's my drawings. It's actually from historical sources that can be used to put into work. So right there, you can use it with Wild Abandon, and it just becomes a rich images. These images generally also are, I'm trying to pick ones that are not everywhere, so people can get new stamps and sort of stencils to pull from. So that's the kit. they'll be sold, at all, like at whatever, Michael's and Barnes and Noble and Target.com and all these places where the book has been sold, and they'll be distributed globally. You can get them in any art store in every country, or they'll be on Amazon as well, so people can purchase them like that. But 2 kits are going to be released every 6 months until all 8 kits are released. And every kit is different. Every booklet in the kit, every stamp, everything is completely different. And it's sort of kind of based a little bit on the Griffin and Sabine series. I always loved Griffin and Sabine in the early days when we were in book arts, and that whole series came out. So it's a bit, a nod to the homage of Griffin and Sabine in terms of the storyline and the way the booklet look and some of the stuff that's in each booklet. There's a surprise kind of thing like Cracker Jacks in each one. Yeah, and I'm going to start a sort of like in my membership, I'm going to do one just for the storyline so that we can come in, show stuff, do things. I just want to have a lot of fun around this. But the goal is that for folks to tie in somewhere along the line to their ancestry, around, like to spin off and do your own storyline similar to mine or whatever, it's just another way to think about how we get to do our art. And so, of course, there's gel printing techniques, different ways to use the stencils and stamps with gel printing, as well as, just working with collage and things like that. So I'm really excited about this project that the owner of Schiffer, he really liked that idea. I presented to him about 2 years ago now, so we've been working on it. It's a 2-year publishing contract with them that I signed. And what's also neat about it is I'm a big proponent of artists being able to get what artists should get. You should be getting paid for your intellectual property. I don't care. And most of these companies out here now, the majority of them still only want to give artists 10%. Most of the artists that you know and love, including myself, when you buy a lot, which is why I stopped selling through a lot of people, because when you buy, generally artists are only getting 10%, and that company is getting the majority of the money on a stamp or a stencil that's costing them pennies. And the artist's intellectual property, you get 10%. I don't like that. Also, the problem is that when we create art, these Asian sites like Temu and Alibaba are literally stealing artists' work. The big way they steal your work, by way of information that I'm sure your listeners, I'm sure you know this, but your listeners may not, is that when you download those apps on your phone, you give permission to everything in your phone to be accessed. That means all of your pictures of your artwork. And these companies don't have the same copyright infringement laws. So they literally go into artists when they recognize, oh, this artist is, out there. They literally go in, and that's how they're swiping these images that are showing up in places that the artists don't even know were actually swiped. So I don't even download those apps on my phone at all. I don't have them on my phone because that's wrong. The second thing that's come out of this project, or third thing, whatever, with the publisher, is when you work with a major, this is the first time a publisher's ever done anything like this. Mostly kits and stuff are done by like Ranger or, the various companies like that, which are they're companies that are producing art supplies. A publisher copyrights everything, and they have copyright protection globally. So that means anything that's in this kit is totally copyright protected. It's my intellectual property. It has ISBN numbers on it, and it's copyright protected. That means a company in Asia somewhere cannot steal these designs without my publisher going after them. Mm-hmm. What's important about that is that I'm hoping that I'm laying a groundwork that other artists can come in and work with my publisher to produce products that will copyright protect. And this is something that I've been passionate about for the longest time, and have been fortunate enough to be able to create this relationship. And hopefully it's creating a roadmap for other artists to come in and be able to do the same thing, because we have to begin to protect ourselves.
Yeah, that is wonderful. It reminds me of the music industry.
And the literary industry. I mean, we're the only industry that's not protected under copyright at all. Mm-hmm. So it's time for that to change. So everybody who supports this project is also not only just supporting the art, but you're supporting a concept that this is successful. I've already started telling Schiffer about other artists, and I've talked to other artists, and they're like, yeah, I'm ready to line up. We can really change by supporting projects like this. We can really change how we, the economy of
Around.
art and how we can then begin to gain more respect around our work. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you for being a leader in that area.
No, absolutely. One of the things that I studied in my secondary program was I studied at the London School of Economics, London University, and I studied financial institutions, but I studied the flow of art, of money in art, because I knew there's something to this starving artist thing ain't a real thing. And what I've discovered is amazing. But the reason why artists' work isn't copyrighted and where we don't have what you call it when you get residuals, you know, like getting, is because if we were to do that, we would begin to disrupt the flow of wealth.
Yep.
In art, because that means you wouldn't be able to buy your painting or my painting for $100 and then in 10 years, because we've become, you know, wildly popular, sell it for 10,000 and we make none of that money.
That's right.
It's a way of storing wealth. So yeah, it's a whole lot to that, but there's time for us to start. It's time for us to break that up now. So I'm happy to champion the cause.
Yeah, again, thank you for that. So where can listeners find you online? You've alluded to several things, your YouTube channel, your Patreon.
Well, I have a weekly YouTube channel where last year was nothing but gel printing chapter by chapter in my book. So those who really want to do gel printing and learn more, and maybe you're not familiar with my work, you can go to YouTube, which is under my name, Robyn McClendon, and look at everything from January through December of 2024. And you literally can go through this book chapter by chapter by chapter.
That's how
I do new things. I do different techniques to what's in the book. So a lot of people had the book and just followed along. And then I expanded on the techniques. This book actually got cut down by almost 100 pages because I had written more than we could fit into that particular volume. But anyway, so that's YouTube. This year on YouTube, I'm doing something called the Pause Journal. So it's a journaling process that we do a lot of it on Patreon, but which is a part of the paid community, but it's at $10. And then on YouTube, where it's free, I talk about the pauses. I encourage people, and I show my journal, and I show my journaling process. So I decided to do that because that fits into my RT mythologist, you know, like really, let's dig in, regulate our parasympathetic systems, and actually pull our stories out. So that's what I'm doing this year on YouTube. I do have a Patreon community, which is under my name as well. Like I said, it's $10 or $25, depending on what level you want to work in. And I do have a Facebook community I've had for probably about 9 years now. But like I said, it's private. Everybody, as long as you come in and say, yeah, I'm gonna follow the rules, I let people in. But I'm telling you, it's diverse with all kind of art. It's very, very active. People are posting all the time. So even if you don't want to post, but you just want to see what people are doing and get inspiration, it's a fun, you know, community to connect into and maybe start showing your own work in a place where you may feel a little safe. So it's a safe space to connect. And I know you have a community as well, but it's just a fun, safe place to come in and see what a lot of artists are doing. And many of them have been in there for years from the beginning, and they're still in there active every week putting stuff up. So it's a lot of fun. My website is robynmcclendon.com. So that's just a good place to catch up with the workshops I'm doing or anything like that. And of course, Instagram is rare.
Okay, I will have all those links in the show notes for people who check out show notes.
Definitely.
So, Robyn, I cannot thank you enough, and I cannot express enough how enjoyable this has been.
I've enjoyed it too, for sure, and wonderful to meet you, and you know, because you've been doing a lot championing this community, and any way that I can continue to support your projects and what you're doing, please don't ever hesitate, because I'm like here with you.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. So everybody, we've been talking to Robyn McClendon, and check her out. She's a wonderful artist and a wonderful human being.
Thank you.
So that's it for today.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Beyond the Brayer. If you enjoyed it, and if you think others might too, please leave a review over at podchaser.com or Apple Podcasts. If you've got any questions about gel printing, please join the Gel Print Enthusiasts Facebook group or email podcast@beyondthebrayer.com. I'd love to hear from you. Join us again next week for another interview with a popular gel print artist. Until next time, keep that brayer rolling.